December 17, 1944. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Oberf-Reiter Hans Müller huddled in his frozen foxhole, scribbling in his diary words that would haunt him forever. The Americans were unlike the Russians. Their artillery was something else entirely. Not just the sheer volume of fire, though that was terrifying enough, but its speed, its precision, and the terrifying certainty that left soldiers no time to react. One moment, there was silence. The next, the world detonated around them. Through the dense morning fog, Müller witnessed a reality that shattered every assumption German troops held about American combat power. His battalion, part of the 6th SS Panzer Army, had just launched Hitler's final gamble in the West. They had caught the Americans off guard, striking weakly defended positions. Victory seemed close. Then American artillery struck. What Müller could not know, what no German soldier advancing through those snow-draped forests could have anticipated, was that they were about to face the deadliest artillery system ever deployed. A system so advanced, so coordinated, and so ruthlessly efficient, it would crush Germany's last offensive and expose the vast reach of American military superiority. Long before the Battle of the Bulge, German veterans transferred from the Eastern Front to fight in Italy, France, and the Low Countries carried assumptions forged in the crucible of Soviet bombardments. They had learned to survive Russian artillery by experience. Ranging shots gave them seconds to seek cover, shells followed predictable patterns, and firing calculations could take 10 to 15 minutes. The Americans were terrifyingly different. Gapa Otto Schmidt, a veteran of 2 years on the Eastern Front, captured in Tunisia in 1943, later described his first encounter with American fire. "We took position in a wadi north of Tunis, good cover, we thought. The Russians would have needed an hour to locate us. We were confident enough to heat our morning coffee. Then we saw a small plane overhead, nothing threatening. 3 minutes later, the entire wadi exploded. No warning, no ranging shots, shells rained simultaneously, in the air and on the ground. In 30 seconds, my company ceased to exist. I was one of 11 survivors from 123 men." The aircraft Schmidt saw was an unassuming L-4 Grasshopper, an American forward observation plane. Not feared for its weapons, but for what it enabled, devastating artillery strikes. German soldiers learned a brutal truth. Seeing a Grasshopper meant minutes, perhaps only seconds, before their position became a killing zone. Lieutenant Friedrich Bauer, a former artillery officer, documented his astonishment decades later in letters found in German archives. "Initially, I thought American artillery documents were propaganda. No system could operate like this. Then I saw it. Near Sino, a Grasshopper appeared. We prepared to move, yet before we could, American shells landed. Not random, not area fire, precise targeting of each gun. They had calculated firing solutions and coordinated multiple batteries to strike simultaneously, faster than we could even relay coordinates to our fire direction center." The secret to American dominance was not a single innovation but a comprehensive system blending technology, training, and industrial capacity Germany could never match. At its core was the Fire Direction Center, FDC, which centralized calculations from multiple batteries, unlike German batteries, which computed fire individually. Across the U.S., rooms of women worked tirelessly with mechanical calculators, slide rules, and logarithms to pre-compute firing tables for every possible variable: wind, temperature, barrel wear, humidity, altitude differences. The result, tables compact enough to carry, enabled fire direction officers to calculate precise solutions in minutes, not hours. Math professor Hedman Vera Hoffman, conscripted into the Wehrmacht artillery, examined captured tables post-war and wrote, "These tables reflect thousands of hours of work. The Americans had prepared for every conceivable battlefield scenario. Our own tables required lengthy field calculations, they had done it all in advance." But precision alone did not make American artillery lethal. The real revolution was time on target, TOT, coordinating multiple batteries so shells from different distances struck within seconds of each other. The effect was catastrophic. German soldiers, reliant on initial warning shots to take cover, had no chance. Studies after the war showed 66% of casualties occurred in the first moments of a barrage. Stabsfeldwebel Kurt Zimmermann, who survived TOT strikes during the Battle of the Bulge, wrote, "It is not artillery as we know it. Silence, then the world ends. Air bursts, ground bursts, all arriving at the same moment. There is no time to move. You are alive one moment, dead or wounded the next." American artillery speed stunned German commanders. While German batteries took 8 to 10 minutes under ideal conditions, American fire could hit in 3. Factors included FM radios for clear communication, specialized forward observers trained in both artillery and infantry tactics, and the ability to coordinate dozens of batteries from a single observer. The integration of observation, calculation, and industrial capacity created a battlefield force Germany could never match. A single lieutenant calling for fire could unleash a torrent of metal equivalent to a small airstrike, delivered faster and far more accurately than any air support could achieve. Austin Rich Mueller, commander of an infantry regiment destroyed near Low in July 1944, documented this power in his final report. A lone American infantry company, trapped in a village, held off his entire regiment for 6 hours. Every assault was repelled by artillery fire, not from one battery, but seemingly dozens. The forward observer, likely a lieutenant or captain, wielded more firepower than Mueller could muster with his entire regimental artillery. 400 men were lost trying to overrun 120 Americans. They failed. The artillery pieces themselves highlighted American industrial dominance. The M2A1 105 mm howitzer, standard for light artillery, was a marvel of design and manufacturing. Rock Island Arsenal perfected techniques allowing rapid production to exact tolerances. By war's end, 8,536 M2A1s had been built. Each American infantry division fielded 36 of these guns, organized into 3 battalions of 12, all fully motorized. Trucks and half-tracks allowed highway speed mobility. What took German horse-drawn artillery 2 to 3 hours to move, American batteries accomplished in 20 to 30 minutes. The contrast was stark. Despite Nazi propaganda showing mechanized panzer divisions, Germany relied heavily on horses, about 80% of its artillery transport. Starting the war with 514,000 horses, Germany had 1,198,000 by February 1945. Each gun needed 6 to 8 horses, taking hours to limber and move. Winter conditions often made movement impossible. Paul Richter, a German artilleryman in Normandy, noted in his diary, "We watched American artillery fire, then relocate. Within 20 minutes, the battery was ready to fire again. We required at least 2 hours, and sometimes 4 in mud or under fire. We were fighting a 19th century war with horses against an enemy, fighting a 20th century war with trucks." American 155 mm howitzers delivered even more destructive fire. Each division had 12 M1 guns in a separate battalion, firing 43 kg shells over 14,000 meters, capable of demolishing fortifications resistant to lighter fire. By war's end, 10,300 had been produced. Towed by trucks or half-tracks at highway speeds, they could rapidly relocate. Crews could fire 4 rounds per minute, occasionally 6. Yet even divisional assets paled next to Corps and Army-level artillery. Forward observers could call in battalions of 155 mm guns, 8-inch howitzers, or massive 240 mm howitzers. A single infantry company could summon devastating firepower within minutes. German artillery, in contrast, was rigid. Corps and Army artillery were separate commands, requiring multiple headquarters to approve fire. Requests for support could take hours, by which time the front had shifted. Lieutenant Joachim Baer recalled during Normandy, "I called for Corps artillery at 0915. By 13:30, 4 hours later, only 3 salvos arrived. The American tanks had already struck and withdrawn. Our position was lost. I survived by luck." American technical mastery extended to ammunition. While Germany suffered propellant shortages and inconsistent shells, the U.S. produced vast quantities to exact specifications. Even more deadly was the variable time, VT fuse, a miniature radar in the shell nose triggering detonation above the ground. Conventional time fuses required precise calculations, vulnerable to errors. VT fuses guaranteed optimal airbursts, showering deadly fragments over troops in shallow cover. First tested in combat by the USS Helena in 1943, VT fuses decimated Japanese dive bombers and V-1 flying bombs. Eisenhower personally insisted on using them in Europe during the Battle of the Bulge, despite Pentagon concerns over security. When deployed, VT shells tore through German formations, exploding above troops trained to survive conventional artillery by seeking cover. Hans Müller, whose diary began this account, survived such a barrage. "We went flat as we had learned on the Eastern Front. But these demon shells exploded above us. Fragments rained down. Men in foxholes were killed. No defense existed except deep bunkers, which we lacked. We simply died. The psychological impact was immense. Soldiers trained to survive artillery by seeking cover were rendered helpless. Knowledge that no ordinary shelter could save them induced paralysis. Some units refused orders to advance, knowing open ground meant almost certain death under American artillery." Friedrich Bauer recorded a near mutiny in his unit during the final weeks of the Ardennes offensive. "My company was ordered to attack an American position 300 meters away. The men refused. They had seen what American artillery could do to troops in the open, especially with these new VT fuses that detonated in midair. I tried to explain that inaction would mean eventual death anyway, that the Americans would eventually overrun our position. Still, the men would not move. They chose the slim chance of capture over the certainty of death." The industrial capacity behind American artillery added another layer of advantage that German soldiers could scarcely comprehend. Rock Island Arsenal alone produced over 10,105 mm howitzers, with multiple factories producing 155 mm guns and even heavier weapons. Shell production reached staggering levels. German industry, hampered by Allied bombing, resource shortages, and inefficient allocation, could never match this scale. German artillery pieces were often technically superior, but too few were produced, and ammunition was scarce. By 1944, many German batteries operated at half strength, guns destroyed or worn out, ammunition rationed to only a few shells per day. Lieutenant Vera Vogel recorded the desperate logistics in his war diary. "We received 50 shells per gun for the entire week, to support an entire regiment facing constant American attacks. Each mission had to be justified to battalion headquarters. Meanwhile, American batteries fired thousands of rounds daily without concern for conservation. We fought a poor man's war against a rich man's army." The disparity shaped tactics. German artillery doctrine emphasized massed fire on high-value targets, executed only after lengthy approval. Americans emphasized immediate responsive fire in support of infantry. An American platoon leader could summon artillery within minutes. A German platoon leader might wait hours, or never receive fire at all. Motorized American logistics ensured rapid resupply, while German horse-drawn batteries struggled, often relying on rail lines disrupted by Allied air power. Standardized American ammunition further simplified supply. Germany faced chronic shortages due to multiple shell and fuse variants. The consequences were devastating on the battlefield. Concentrated German forces invited annihilation by artillery. Dispersed units lacked enough combat power and could be destroyed piecemeal. The Ardennes offensive, Germany's final major Western attack, illustrated this brutally. Planners counted on fog and overcast skies to neutralize American air power, unaware that artillery required no weather conditions. Initially, German divisions achieved penetrations, but American artillery soon struck. Horse-drawn batteries were destroyed in place. Insufficient ammunition prevented effective counter-battery fire. Stabsfeldwebel Kurt Zimmermann noted in his diary, "Our battery was south of St. Vith. 50 shells per gun, the entire week's allocation. We fired in support of our infantry. Within 10 minutes, American counter-battery fire destroyed 3 of our 6 guns and killed most of the horses. We tried to move the remaining guns but had no horses. We abandoned them and withdrew on foot." This pattern repeated across the front. By December 22, Even with ammunition rationed to 10 rounds per gun per day, American artillery decisively halted German attacks around Bastogne. Once weather cleared, resupply resumed, and artillery fire intensified. Across the Bulge, 4,155 American guns fired 1,255,000 rounds. German units that had advanced 50 kilometers into American lines became trapped, subject to virtually unlimited artillery support once resupply returned. Oberst Heinrich Müller, whose regiment had been destroyed 6 months earlier at Low, commanded a replacement regiment during the Bulge. In his post-war report from a POW camp, "We were defeated by American artillery before infantry or armor. Every movement was observed and engaged. Concentrated forces were shredded. Defensive positions obliterated before American infantry attacked. We could not move, mass, or defend. We simply absorbed fire until we ceased to exist as a fighting force." The offensive, intended to reach Antwerp and split Allied armies, stalled within a week, broken primarily by American artillery. Units that began at full strength ended with 30 to 40% casualties, mostly from artillery. German POWs who witnessed American artillery operations firsthand in the U.S. saw the system's professionalism and preparation. Otto Schmidt, captured in Tunisia and held in Texas, wrote, "I have seen American industry at work. Trains loaded with artillery pieces move to ports for shipment. Factories churn out shells by the thousands. The Americans defeated us not only with tactics or brave soldiers but through sheer industrial might. They could fire 100 rounds where we fired one, replace lost equipment within days. We could never match this." American artillery crews trained relentlessly, honing the coordination and communication that made time-on-target missions possible. Forward observers worked closely with infantry units, practicing integration that made American combined arms operations so effective. Lieutenant Friedrich Bauer, captured in Italy, attended lectures in a POW camp where American officers explained their methods. His notes, preserved in German archives, reveal admiration and respect. "They have systematized everything we achieved by individual skill and initiative. Where we depended on talented artillery officers computing firing solutions, they created tables allowing average officers to produce the same results. Where we relied on capable radio operators under extreme conditions, they built radios so reliable that even minimally trained operators maintained contact. They have transformed artillery from an art into an industrial, repeatable, scalable process. This is the secret of their success." German prisoners quickly realized how false propaganda about American weakness had been. The men they faced on the battlefield, and the officers they encountered in camps, exhibited professionalism, organization, and industrial capability far exceeding German norms. Hans Mahler, whose diary chronicled the Ardennes collapse, recorded a profound shift in perspective. "We were told Americans lacked fighting spirit, that their success relied on material superiority because they were inferior soldiers. These were lies. American soldiers fought with courage and skill, but they also wielded overwhelming material advantages, particularly an artillery system we could not counter. That system defeated us more than any other factor." By early 1945, German artillery was in collapse. Ammunition production faltered under Allied bombing. Experienced crews were killed or lost, replacements were insufficient. Horses essential for moving guns died in thousands. Batteries that had begun the war with 6 guns operated with 2 or 3, and some divisions had none at all. American artillery, in contrast, grew stronger. Factories churned out weapons and shells at unprecedented rates. Improved fire direction, advanced radios, and new technologies enhanced lethality even further. By the war's end in May 1945, American artillery demonstrated capabilities unimaginable just years earlier. Single battalions delivered overwhelming fire on demand. Corps artillery coordinated devastating strikes across entire map grids. Forward observers could call destruction anywhere within minutes, confident that accurate fire would arrive. German survivors recognized its efficiency and lethal precision. Hedman Vera Hoffmann, the mathematics professor who analyzed American firing tables, reflected in April 1945, "The American artillery system is the culmination of industrial-age warfare. Individual German guns or officers may be superior in design or skill, but the Americans built a system that does not rely on individual excellence. Consistent, overwhelming, rapid firepower is delivered regardless of operator skill. This system represents a revolution in warfare Germany could never match. Historians post-war consistently identified American artillery as the decisive advantage in the Western theater. While tanks and aircraft drew public attention, it was artillery that shattered German attacks, supported advances, and inflicted massive casualties. General Franz Halder, former chief of the German General Staff, wrote, "American artillery achieved the impossible. They transformed it from a supporting arm into a dominant weapon." Coordination, fire control, logistics, and industrial production created a force Germany could not counter. German units in the West were under constant threat, unable to mass or move without drawing devastating fire. Tactical innovations like time on target, centralized fire direction centers, and forward observer integration remain the foundation of modern artillery doctrine. The proximity fuse, initially top secret, magnified both psychological and physical effects. German soldiers caught in the open had no defense, breaking unit cohesion entirely. Stabsfeldwebel Kurt Zimmermann, survivor of multiple TOT barrages, recalled decades later in the U.S., "I have been asked what weapon I feared most. Not tanks, not aircraft, not even infantry, but American artillery. Sudden, devastating, precise. You could die without ever seeing the enemy. That was true terror." Ultimately, the story of American artillery is a story of industrial-age warfare transformed. Courage and skill mattered less than systematic training, industrial production, and organizational excellence. The Americans created a system that amplified the abilities of ordinary soldiers, outmatching even exceptional German troops. The artillery that shattered German forces was not the work of a single innovation or brilliant officer. It was the product of analysis, industrial application, training, and abundant resources. For German soldiers, the experience was transformative. Entering the war believing in German superiority, they left with a stark realization: American industry, organization, and artillery had created an unbridgeable gap. Above all, they had learned to fear American artillery, the weapon that embodied the difference between German tradition and American industrial warfare. Join our mission to uncover forgotten battles. Like, subscribe, and share to keep history alive.